All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to We Ain't Got No History. My name is David, and we just finished another 0-0 draw here in Chelsea land, this time against Leicester City. Still trying to figure out when was the last time we actually accomplished this amazing historic feat of not only not scoring for 3 games straight, because that's about 5 years, but actually accomplishing 3 straight 0-0 draws, 4 straight draws overall, which is also, I try to look back about 10 years, 10, 15 years, but obviously we probably have to go back a lot further than that to find this kind of ineptitude. I mean, in a way, at least we're not losing, right? This is the Gus hitting argument when he saved us from relegation 2 years ago. That's when we went on that fairly lengthy unbeaten streak, but every other game was a draw. Season is over. That's a good first comment. Well, I mean, the Premier League season has been over for a while, in a way, because we were not going to win the title this year. I mean, we were still well in contention for top 4, possibly even second place. Although we've after calling back Manchester United over the winter period, the festive period, we've once again fallen behind. They play on Monday, so we'll see how damaging this latest draw is. But that's 4 points now dropped in the league over the last 2 games, since there's 2 draws against Arsenal and now Leicester. And then the other 2 draws are each in different competition, which also kind of is a bit of an excuse that way, but it's also just makes it more odd. You know, we've basically, over the last 3 games, we've tried every player. I think every player has played at least a little bit. We tried both of our main formations, our tactics, and nothing doing. I mean, the one thing today was the difference was, I suppose, from the last 2 games is unlike the last 2 games, we had actually problems creating chances, whereas in the previous games we were having trouble finishing chances. Today it was just bad. You know, I mean, even against Norwich, you could say the first half was terrible, but we improved in the second half and created at least a couple of chances to score. Today, struggling to think of any time where it was an obvious scoring opportunity. Even when Leicester went down to 10 men, and in fact, we possibly looked worse after they went down to 10 men, and we just looked completely devoid and out of ideas. They just packed the box and couldn't do much at all. Chelsea have no chance against Barcelona. It's at this point it doesn't really matter. I mean, when we won the Champions League, we were one of our worst teams of the last couple of decades. So it's a knockout competition. You never know. If we hold Barcelona to 0 goals, just like we've been doing all these opponents, there's always a chance. Not truly concerned about Barcelona at this point. More concerned about beating Norwich on Wednesday to progress in the FA Cup, then beating Brighton on the weekend, and then beating Arsenal. So there's 3 games coming up once again in 3 different competitions. You know, it's not good times right now, but it's still just draws. And really, what Conte had been talking about for the last couple of weeks with Morata struggling to score and stuff like that, was saying that he'd be concerned if we weren't creating chances as opposed to we weren't finishing chances. You know, the finishing, it could be cyclical, could depend on streaks or whatever form. Strikers go on hot streaks, cold streaks, whatever. But the fact that we weren't creating chances today is possibly something that Conte now needs to be concerned about, needs to be thinking about how to change it or how to fix it, other than just switching between 3-4-3 and 3-5-2. Yeah, the Bakayoko hate is strong, says Brian. he is the man of the scapegoat of the hour, one could say. I mean, in fairness, what is Bakayoko's best position, or what does he contribute? Because today, other than a couple pretty bad shots, yeah, it was tough to figure out what he was adding to the team. And unfortunately, Drinkwater was not on the bench for some reason. They seemed totally fine. We went. The bench was Christensen, David Luiz, Zappacosta, Batshuayi, Willian, and Pedro. So we had a bench that didn't have a single central midfielder. So when Bakayoko once again struggled, we were kind of at a loss. Of course, it didn't help that Fabregas had one of his worst games I remember in since he joined. Really, we can always the common knock against Fabregas has been that he's not good defensively, but he made up for it with passing and creating chances and holding on to possession. Recycling the ball, controlling the game, stuff like that. And he did none of that today. So it's no wonder. To me, there were a couple of people I saw were a bit surprised by the double substitution around the hour mark when Conte took off Hazard and Fabregas. But to me, just based on how those two were playing, that move was possibly overdue, 15 minutes overdue. It probably would have been a bit harsh and a bit certainly would have made some headlines if Conte had taken both of them off at halftime. But they were not good in the half, and they did not improve at all after the break. So I could see that. Obviously he didn't plan on having to use his third sub to replace Cahill, who got hurt in the 33rd minute. It looked like he pulled his hamstring. So that denied him a final substitution, which probably would have been Batshuayi, or possibly a straight swap of Zappacosta for Moses, which is another move that he likes to make. But Morata kept on losing the ball. I mean, everybody kept on losing the ball. Especially in the first half, I've never seen so many giveaways and failed passes. I don't think any one of Hazard's flicks came off today. He tried some of his fancier stuff. None of it was working. Simpler passes maybe would have been better, but those nothing was working. I mean, first half was pretty terrible. I think 12. There was a statistic going around that Leicester's 12 shots in the first half were the most that Chelsea have allowed at home in the Premier League in, I don't know, I forget the that's a terrible let's see if we can look it up quickly. But it was certainly setting records and making history, as we like to do over here, and since 2003 and 2004. So it's the most. The first half, 12 shots, was the most that Chelsea have allowed at a Premier League match at home since the Abramovich era. So that's something to take note of today. I'm still hoping that somebody can find out when the last time we drew three games in a row 0-0. Batshuayi should be trusted. I mean, at this point, but you say that, but Batshuayi was not very good against Norwich, and that's what I was trying to kind of saying earlier is, blaming individual players or even tactics today. It's who are you going to replace him with? We've gone 3 games without scoring, and every single player has played, and none of them have come. Christensen, came possibly closest to scoring by missing 2 open headers against Arsenal. That's the extent of our players living up to expectations and trying to score goals. So maybe this is why Conte needs to go back to the drawing board and see what needs to change. Earlier this season, when the 3-4-3 wasn't working, we switched to the 3-5-2, and that kind of got us a few results. It became our primary formation, and it seems to have run into a bit of a cul-de-sac here. Of course, against Norwich, we used the 3-4-3, so who knows? I mean, Today we took off Hazard and Fabregas and put on Pedro and Willian for the last 30 minutes. And I mean, Willian did his usual things, but I can't really call Pedro having much of an impact on a game other than a couple attempted long shots that probably both were blocked. I mean, that's that's not really the impact you're looking for. I mean, obviously Pedro can score a couple of good goals, but how's that really going to help you win games? You need a bit of creativity. I mean, in a way, possibly Conte got unlucky, or well, not unlucky. He possibly made the bad calls in starting the wrong formation. Most of us, we do a survey before each game on the site, and most of us, a good 70%, I think this time would have preferred a 3-4-3 to get us another forward. Conte obviously disagreed. He went with a 3-5-2 with the usual, Hazard Morata combination up top. The one change in the midfield from Arsenal game was Bakayoko instead of Drinkwater. Same wingers, Alonso and Moses. And then the back three was reshuffled for whatever reason. And we went with Rudiger, Cahill, and Azpilicueta. And really, the first half we probably kind of were lucky to finish it out 0-0 because Leicester had several excellent opportunities. Vardy was running all over the place, as we knew he would. And you look at Leicester and you know how they're going to attack you, and yet they were still quite successful. Both Vardy and Okazaki had the run of Chelsea's defense, and just some rather Chelsea-esque finishing from Leicester actually prevented them from scoring. They had I think they had one shot on target from those record 12 shots that we were talking about earlier. So yeah, Morata needs support strikers. I mean, yeah, he needs to be a little stronger. Unfortunately, today was once again a little crumply, weak Morata, where somebody laid a finger on him or breathed on him wrong, and he would crumple to the ground and then look around exasperatingly, like, "Why didn't I get the call?" Yeah, unfortunately that's not gonna fly. And at this point, he kind of has a reputation for it now. As soon as it happens. I mean, there was an incident a couple minutes into the game, and all of a sudden that's all they were talking about. So he clearly has this reputation going for him, which is not good. But I mean, Drogba had it once too, and he worked his way through it. So perhaps Morata can as well. Rudiger is a disaster too. Everyone's a disaster. When you don't score for 3 straight games, something possibly is wrong. To put it mildly, and this is the point where we once again have to trust Conte that he'll figure it out. Last year the switch, the famous switch from 4-2-4 or whatever we were playing to 3-4-3, was a bold move at the time, and it worked out quite well. Earlier this season, we also did the slight shift in tactics from last season's to this season's 3-5-2. Maybe there's time. Now is the time for something new. Incidentally, since the next game is the Norwich game, I think it actually could be a good opportunity to possibly experiment with a different formation and in a sort of like a low pressure sort of environment. I mean, obviously we should expect Chelsea to progress in the cup, and if we lose at home to Norwich, that's probably not a good look. But it's possibly the time to maybe try something new we haven't seen. Maybe you don't go with a 3-4-3 and a 3-5-2. Maybe go, I don't know, back to a back four. That could be interesting. Do we maybe have the players now to play a back four? Who knows? It's unfortunately for Conte, there is not much time to really work on anything like that, since the Norwich game is coming up on Wednesday, so that's 3 days, and then just another 2 days. 2 days after that, we go to Brighton, and then another 3 days after that, we go to Arsenal for the League Cup. So it's not much playing time. There's opportunity to rotate, obviously. So Norwich, we will undoubtedly see all the players who we didn't see today, including, it sounds like, Ross Barkley. And it's kind of funny how Ross Barkley has gone from last week an afterthought and somebody who people were wondering why we even spent money on this guy, and now he's like the bright sunshiny hope. Is maybe Ross Barkley will help us get a goal. Wouldn't that be nice? Oh, Ross Barkley. Conte got lucky last year when it's time for him some coaching. I mean, that's certainly a strong take there. There's there's undoubtedly plenty of luck involved in anything that anybody does in terms of coaching, considering you're not out there doing it yourself. You you sit your players down, you tell them your instructions, you work on the drills in the training ground, whatever, work on skills. But once the referee's whistle go, there's only so much you can do. You see Conte trying to influence players and yell at them from the touchline, but he's not out there kicking the ball. It's at you have to trust the players you put out there to do the work and do your execute your instructions. And that's I don't know. I don't know if there's one thing that is kind of a tough criticism of Conte there is about coaching, because that's the one thing that we know he does for sure. He is a coach's coach. He's always talks about improving players, and he has improved players. So you can talk about his man management or his tactics or his handling of transfers, whatever, relationships, but yeah, I don't think accusing him of not coaching the players is a good way to go. Yeah, luck doesn't win you 13 games in a row. Yeah, there's at some point you gotta give credit to the work involved, both the players and the coaches. Sanchez should be a good buy. Yeah, whoever ends up buying him will be good for him. I don't think it's going to be Chelsea. That's a lot of money to be investing in a 29-year-old. Not just everybody talks about the transfer fee, and even Conte was saying 20 million or whatever the price is, 20 to 35 for Sanchez is a bargain, which I mean it is, but not when you see that he's apparently demanding 400,000 a week, which even City are apparently not willing to pay that much to him. So I mean that's a ridiculous amount. Hazard's new contract is supposedly on 300 a week, 300,000 a week. So bringing in a new guy, Sanchez, at 33% more than that, that's nonsense. That's not going to happen. It's obviously buying transfers is an easy crutch to fall back on, but these are the players that we have, and these are the players that kind of have to get the job done. So now it's up to Conte to wring out better performances from them. He did that last year when he turned essentially the same team that finished 10th into Premier League champions. The best we can do this season is probably second, which is unfortunate, but that's kind of in a way out of our hands as well because Manchester City are unbeatable. It's the room for improvement, and just pressing the panic button or pressing the transfer button, the buy button is not necessarily going to solve your problems. You just have to figure out whether this is actually a systemic issue. Today it certainly seemed like it because we seem to not be able to create any chances worthy of note, and we were giving up a fair few chances at the other end. Previous draws and previous poor results seem to hinge more on, failing to finish chances. You see that more recently. You could say maybe players are tired, and there's only so much you can do about that. You can rotate better, but then you have to rotate to players like Bakayoko, who apparently has not lived up to his expectations yet. So No easy answers, unfortunately. No easy answers. Why is everybody talking about an 8-2 formation? People love to call this a defensive formation. I don't think we were. If you look at today's game, I think it's hard to accuse Chelsea of being defensive. I mean, when Leicester had the ball, we were being carved open. When we had the ball, we just struggled to create. This wasn't like we weren't sitting back and trying to counter. That'd be a defensive formation. What stuff that like Di Matteo played in the first half season when we won the Champions League. Those were defensive formations. Playing a 4-2-3-1 with fullbacks hanging back and two shielding midfielders and defensive wingers. Now that's a defensive formation for you. That's how we won the Champions League. It's every formation has its use. There's no need to be we don't need to be name calling there in the comments. It's not very nice. Too many games this period. Well, certainly it's been what, two games a week for as long as I can remember. And today or this week was supposed to be our open week when we get to relax, but unfortunately because we did draw with Norwich, this midweek is filled now as well. Why does he not bring Aubameyang? Well, it's not up to Conte, It's he doesn't control transfers. It's unfortunately one of those things that the media in general doesn't do a good job of explaining how transfers work, and it's just very easy shorthand to say, Conte wants this guy and Conte buys this guy and sells that guy, but at Chelsea anyway, and at most big clubs, excuse me, the manager or the head coach, which is Conte's official title, he's not in charge of transfers. He makes his recommendations, he gives a short list, gives his priority or preferred targets, but that doesn't mean he's going to get him. He's not, he's not out there. He's not out there talking to agents and negotiating deals. That's not his job. So that's why actually having somebody like Conte, whose expertise and remit is being a good coach, is actually a good way to go. It's obviously morale is a little low. 4 straight draws is not good. 3 games without scoring, not good. But they're not losing. Slight positive there. We're not conceding goals despite today's rather poor defensive performance. Also positive. And as AFTAB says, we're still heading for top 4, which we are still in top 4. I mean, we could be Arsenal. We could be Real Madrid. I don't know if anybody's seen how badly Real Madrid are doing these days, but they just lost at home to Villarreal. So the race between who gets sacked first, Zidane or Conte, is currently firmly being won by Zidane, which is quite hilarious considering he just did a double, domestic and Champions League double, and became the first team in the Champions League era to defend their title. Things change quickly, I guess. Not just at Chelsea. But yeah, as Aftab says, we're heading for top 4. We're in 3 cups. Still in 3 cups, with very good chance of advancing in the FA Cup and getting to the final in the League Cup. And the season could get much better. That's right. It's, I don't know. It's the negativity and slating every player and saying buy this, buy that, all this Conte out, Conte this, whatever on Twitter you see. It seems highly useless, but that's just me. I'm not necessarily the most positive person in the world, but there's not that much use to being super negative about things. There are good things out there that we're doing. Nothing is working forward, says Robin. Hazard's head has been turned by Real Madrid. I don't think it's been turned at all. I mean, Hazard himself just said he's going to sign his new contract. All right? He was at the NBA game and interviewed by the Daily Mirror, and he's told them that yes, he will sign, and Courtois first, and then him. I mean, unless he's lying, which is not very nice. Um, I don't think his head has been turned. That's just it's usual Hazard. He's is the things that keep him from being on the level of Messi and Ronaldo is the fact that he has games like today, or when he drifts out of games and just doesn't care, doesn't seem to care. I shouldn't say he doesn't care because I don't know if he does care or doesn't care. But he doesn't seem to care. And he says things like, "Oh, we scored 2 goals, that's enough," instead of pushing for more. When he says things like, he's just as happy creating as he's finishing, which is great for Conte because he loves team players. But to be the best of the best, you kind of have to have that little selfish streak, make the correct choices, stuff like that. But yeah, Hazard, not a good game today. It happens. There was when he came back from his injury, there was a good couple months when he was by far our best player, and when Hazard is playing really well, Chelsea tend to win. That's how it goes. When he doesn't play too well, like today, we tend to struggle, and I'd say that's true for a lot of teams, not just Chelsea. When the best player on the team, the best creative player, best attacking player struggles, you're going to struggle. That's kind of the definition. You're not playing with 2 Hazards, you're playing with 1 Hazard. So when one is not up to par, and the rest of the team kind of suffers. So it's yeah, who knows? Who knows? But I don't think Real Madrid has anything to do with Hazard's form. It's just Hazard being Hazard. He is not the Ballon d'Or level player. He is just a step below. We know that. That doesn't mean he's bad. Don't take that as criticism. He's an amazing player, but he does have games like this. We need to sign better players than Bakayoko, Zappacosta, Drinkwater, and Barkley, says Abby. Yeah, that's we need to sign Christian Pulisic. Is the answer to any and all questions from here on forward. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Zappacosta has underwhelmed for me. He seems to be a one-trick guy who kind of can, once he gets going, he can run in a straight line. He's supposedly pretty good at crossing, but haven't really seen that. He got lucky with that goal against Karabag. He hit the post. He's got a good shot, I guess. I guess we could say that because he did hit the post against Arsenal that one time. It was interesting. Almost won it. Bakayoko, well, that's the big mystery. I think Bakayoko is one of those players who, unfortunately, we have to give him time. It's easy to write him off now, and he could at this point. If we write him off, I could easily see him being the next, De Bruyne or Salah or whoever, Lukaku, all these young players whom we wrote off too early, let them go, and then a few years later they turn out to be amazing. Of course, there's no guarantee that those players turn out the same way if they stay at Chelsea. But it's a little too early to write off Bakayoko. What we need to do is not play him as much. Then again, as we were saying just earlier, I mean, it's not like Drinkwater was amazing against Arsenal because he wasn't. So it's hard to justify another start for Drinkwater after his performance against Arsenal, which I didn't think was very good at all. And I think Drinkwater also played against Norwich, right? So that would have been 3 games in a week for him. And that could explain why he was not even on the bench. When the whole team is fit, somebody's gonna have to miss out completely. We need Donovan. Oh yes, Landon Donovan, the savior. Landon Donovan unfortunately went off to play in Mexico or some random spot. The money we spent on cheap players could go towards one marquee signing. Yes. I think that's. There was a good article by our friend Joe Tweeds on. You can go check out his Twitter, and there's a link to it. But basically, and this is something that many people have said, many times before, is if you have, say, 200 million to spend, or let's go with an easier example. Say you have 100 million to spend, I mean, obviously in today's market that buys you maybe one player, but just as a thought exercise, if you have 100 million to spend, you could buy say 5 players at 20 million, and those would be say average quality. Or you could buy 2 players at 50 million each, who would theoretically be better quality than the 20 million players, and then fill out the rest of the squad from this amazing academy that we have and loan army, loan players. Bring some of them back. And those two approaches are basically two opposing philosophical approaches to how we can play the transfer market, and Chelsea tend to do the former, where we spend a lot of money on 30, 40, 20 million pound signings. Morata may be the one exception, but somebody like Drinkwater was 35, Bakayoko was 40, Rudiger was in the 20s, Zappacosta was in the 20s. Who else did we sign? Alonso was in the 20s, and some of them have turned out well. I mean, Alonso, I think, is a very good player and fits the system very well. But there's on the other side, we have somebody like Moses, who came back from the loan army and has done a decent enough job. Certainly, overall in the last 18 months, he was really good last year, less so this year. So we average it out into an average performance. But maybe, not buying Drinkwater and somebody else like Drinkwater and Zappacosta could have given us money to buy, I don't know, Alexandro, or, not buying Ross Barkley, which admittedly is a bargain in today's world. So maybe that we can ignore that. But, we were almost bought Barkley for 35, and buying Barkley for 35 would not have been a good move. He's at 15, he might work out at 35, not. So maybe if you don't buy 35 million pound players, save money on not buying 3 of those, spend 100 million on somebody, again, Pulisic, because he's obviously the hype is real. We'll be here all day for Pulisic hype, but somebody top class, somebody can actually make an actual impact on the team when he plays, significant impact. And then fill out the rest of the squad with players like, Chalobah, who went off to Watford, or Loftus-Cheek, who's on loan, or Lewis Baker, who's on loan, or Mario Pasalic, who's playing for, Moscow in the Russian league. These are all players who, at worst, are below average or are young and could thus easily develop into something good, especially with a coach like Conte. Now, Conte himself could be a problem here because last season he found it hard to trust a lot of these types of players. We had both Loftus-Cheek and Chalobah in the squad, and didn't necessarily play as much as they could have. So, maybe you do need a different coach for this system to work, or this transfer strategy to work. But not that this seems to be the transfer strategy we're following. So maybe there is good synergy after all. We have a board and we have a coach who like to go for a lot of quality in terms of width. So like a lot of similar quality players across, as opposed to vertical quality where you have a lot of really good players and then some youngsters to fill out the squad. So yeah, that's the long and short of that problem. In more immediate matters, this isn't going to change overnight, unfortunately. As much as we want to, we can go out and buy whoever we want within reason. But it is January, and January is a really tough month to do any business. Really, I'm sure we do a lot of loan shuffling. We already did several. Signing Barkley was already pretty good. There's some rumors that Batshuayi might be leaving to go to Seville on loan. That would require Chelsea to buy, or at least loan in, could be interesting, a striker to back up and compete with Morata. Fortunately, when you are linked with names like Andy Carroll and Christian Benteke, and who else it was, these are not inspiring names. At this point, there's if we sign Andy Carroll, I mean, it's not people who are complaining about Chelsea's play and ambition or whatever they want to call it these days. If we sign Andy Carroll, they will not be happy. That's that's a fact. I think we can easily agree on. So who knows? I don't think there's any easy solutions. You're gonna have to fight through this poor form and find some goals somewhere. And then as soon as that first goal goes in, we'll all start feeling a lot better about it. Some confidence will return to the players. Maybe Morata will get out of his own head and start scoring again, and we'll be right as rain. Yeah. All right. I think that's enough nonsense. Conte only knows how to play one system. That's patently untrue because we played at least 3 systems underneath him since he's been here. The 4-2-4 and the 3-4-3, and this time the 3-5-2. You could say 3-4-3 and 3-5-2 are pretty similar, but there are key differences. So that's at least that's 3 systems right there. How can we say he only knows one system? Well, we might need changing. This is true. But he has shown ability to change before, and if he thinks that now we are at a point where we should be concerned about performances, then yeah, maybe there will be some change. Are we getting Leon Bailey? Yeah, Leon Bailey is a name that's being linked with Chelsea. There was somebody, Simon Johnson, Evening Standard, was saying that we've been monitoring him for like 5 years. Which doesn't really mean much because Chelsea monitor a lot of players anyway. But so I guess the point is that we've known about Bailey for a while. He was linked with Chelsea a few years ago before going to Belgium, and now he's in Bayer Leverkusen. I don't know. I don't know much about Bailey. I don't think this transfer is really happening. It's just another one of the stories to fill the pages. Somebody at Leverkusen was saying that they're not really willing to sell, which is pretty obvious. Bailey himself, last time I saw him quoted, said he wants to finish out the season, all that stuff. So learn and grow, blah blah blah. It's all agent games. It's all just stories. All right. So next up for Chelsea after today's 0-0, third in a row, is FA Cup third round replay against Norwich City. This will be on Wednesday night at home once again at the Bridge. We should expect a lot of rotation, maybe even starts for some younger players. Should be expecting a start for Ross Barkley, who is suddenly our goal-scoring savior, hopefully, and advancement to the next round, where Chelsea have been, or the winner of Chelsea Norwich have been drawn against Newcastle. So that could be interesting. A little reunion with Benitez once again. After the midweek game next weekend, we're away at Brighton. Brighton lost today to some random team. So that's another winnable game. Certainly, if we can find our goal-scoring touch, which seems to have deserted us. So I think that'll wrap it up for us today. That's about all I'm willing to talk about. A 0-0 draw. One of these days, I'll find out just how historic and rare this occasion is. 0-0 and penalties is the prediction for Norwich City. I mean, at this point, that's good money right there. It might be a pretty safe prediction, I think. 0-0 and penalties. Let's hope we score some penalties in the shootout and progress. I'm here for all the 0-0s, all the clean sheets in the world. All right. If you watched any of this, thanks for the comments. Less so for the name-calling ones. Don't do that. That's not very nice. We will talk to you or have another one of these after a Norwich game or the morning after the Norwich game. which hopefully we will score some goals. Yay! Score some goals. Everybody loves goals. Thanks for watching.